Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
It's time for this.
The Conspiracy Files on Tip Today.
And Ali is with me in the Sean O'Casey play, Juno and the Paycock. Jock just said, "What is the moon?" And you're going to answer that for us today, Ali, aren't you?
I am, yeah, and this is the one I chose this week. There was a lot to choose from this week because it's quite a busy time for conspiracy theories.
Yes.
Like if you look, Three Eye Atlas is still on the way. You've Candace Owens, who created a lot of furore this week.
She's lost the plot.
Well, has she?
Yeah.
She's claiming that the French government, particularly the Macrons, have taken out a hit against her. Now, she didn't do her podcast this week because she said there was security risks associated with it because of this death threat. And some people have come out to say that it is quite credible.
Right, well, she has been obsessed with the Macrons.
She is going to out Brigitte Macron no matter what she does, and that is subject to a court case that's due to come in the new year as well. And she claims that the Macrons have taken out a hit against her, and she will be the next person who's assassinated after Charlie Kirk. Erica Kirk is another conspiracy theory at the moment. I don't know if you've seen that.
I've been following that.
That she's pregnant with JD Vance's child is the conspiracy theory at the moment. Don't quite believe that one. The other one then is that Donald Trump is right on the verge of announcing that aliens do exist, that he's had some high government briefings over the last number of days, and he's about to announce that aliens do in fact exist.
So conspiracies are...
It's an exciting time.
It's an exciting time indeed.
But the one we chose today was the moon.
The moon, yeah.
Because with Three Eye Atlas, I suppose, and all the attention on that.
And just remind listeners about that again. That's the thing that's hurtling towards the Earth, and we're not sure exactly
comet
what it is.
That's on its way, that's been behaving very strangely.
Right.
It's due to come to its closest part beside Earth on the 19th of December. So we should know then exactly what we're dealing with. But there's a lot of debate on exactly what we're dealing with. But when it comes to the moon, I think most scientists will agree on the general idea that a Mars-sized object smashed into the Earth about 4.5 billion years ago, and in doing so created a massive amount of debris that then fell into orbit around the Earth, and eventually that all coalesced into a single object that we now call our moon. But this mystery isn't really considered to be solved, and there are a lot of people that believe that the moon isn't what we've always been led to believe. That the moon isn't a result of an ancient cosmic cataclysm, but that someone or something actually brought it here. So if we look back on the theories, and there are various scientific theories on how the moon was actually formed, but all of them are quite problematic. So if you look at the collision model, so this is the one I just spoken about, which is the one that is widely believed by scientists who have happened that formed the moon. And this is where a collision with a large impactor, which has been called Theia, hit Earth with just about the right force 4.5 billion years ago. But there are some issues with that, because that collision in itself had to be strong enough to throw this huge amount of material up into orbit around the Earth, but not so strong that it would destroy the Earth. Plus, you have the moon's composition, which is very similar to the Earth's, whereas most scientists think the big smash should have left the moon being mostly made of debris from Theia.
Ah, right, okay, I get it, yeah.
So you also have the capture theory. This is another theory by scientists, that the moon was captured in our orbit, that it was basically floating around the cosmos and was pulled in by our orbit when it drifted too close to us. But that too has been deemed impossible by most scientists. You also have the accretion theory. Now, this one suggests that the moon and the Earth actually formed together from the very same swirling cloud of gas and dust. But this theory was largely discarded because it failed to explain why the moon was such a smaller iron core and why it would spin on an axis as well. You also have the fission hypothesis. This is the theory that the Earth at one stage was spinning so fast that large rocks were flung from the ocean right into space, and that they all formed together to form the moon. But that has been kind of dismissed as well, because rock samples on the moon show that those rocks are older than most rocks on Earth. You also have the combination theory. So this is where a large object collided with the Earth 4.5 billion years ago, vaporizing us, and this vapor was spinning very quickly, causing a torus or a spinning wheel. And the moon then was formed on the edge of that. Its distance from us, its density, its structure of the moon, all of that is still quite a mystery.
Right, but that combination theory, that would have seen the Earth being destroyed.
Completely, and then reformed.
Oh, and then reformed.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you now. Okay.
Yeah. So it was hoped, I think, that during the 60s we'd get a bit more clarity on what exactly the moon is and what it's composed of. But actually, when you look at it, since the moon landings in 1969, the rocks and soil samples that have been taken from there have only really added to the confusion, because they are very strange. Because if you look on Earth, a rock sample that's taken from here, obviously you will take it from the top of the Earth. It's the newest sample, and the rock and the soil then obviously get older as you dig down.
Yeah.
That's logical. But on the moon, the rocks on the surface are older than the ones underneath it.
Wow.
So that only happens from drilling or mining. You also have the pockmarks on the moon. They're also very strange, because the general idea is that they were caused by asteroid strikes. But you would expect the rock then on the fringes of those craters to be older. But they're all the same age. The ones on the fringe and the ones on the bottom of the crater, all the same age. Also, moon craters, which is very unusual, they're all the same depth, despite the fact that they're all different sizes. They're all exactly the same
And
depth.
how is that explained?
They just say it's from dust settling in the craters after asteroid strikes over a number of years. But still, with that theory, there's no reason why they would all be exactly the same depth.
Yeah.
Also, you've lunar dust as well. Lunar dust has a different chemical makeup than the rocks around it, which also doesn't make sense, because if it is caused by millions of years of strikes that have vaporized the rocks, turning them to dust, it should contain the same elements as those rocks, but it doesn't. Also, the moon doesn't have a magnetic field, but moon rocks themselves are strongly magnetized. That's what they've discovered from rocks that have been taken from the moon and analysed. This does not occur naturally either. So if the Earth and moon were formed together, why is there such a discrepancy between them? You also have the very strange story that came about from these moon landings. You have the Apollo 12 story in particular, where the crew of Apollo 12 initially or intentionally released the lunar lander, crashing it into the moon's surface. Now, this was always the plan. They didn't need the lunar lander anymore.
Yeah.
So it was just a case of releasing it and it crashed back down to the moon. But when it did hit back into the moon, something very strange happened, because seismic measurements show that the moon rang like a bell and vibrated for more than an hour afterwards. And this was documented by the astronauts and documented by NASA at the time as well. Mike Barra is the author of Dark Mission, and he explains what that actually means.
The moon basically resonated, and to put it the way NASA put it, it rang like a bell, which doesn't really make any sense if the moon is solid. Now, this can only happen if there were vast empty spaces inside the moon, where these sound waves would be bouncing around for hours and hours afterwards. It was not a result they expected. So it's possible what we're looking at here is that there are interior portions of the moon which are hollowed out.
Has that been investigated?
It has, because it happened, it came as a bit of a shock to all the crew of Apollo 12, and then it led to an experiment then that was conducted by the Apollo 17 mission, and that experiment was called Chapel Bell. Now, it's quite obvious what this experiment was to do with, but we don't know exactly, because that experiment was classified and remains classified, which in itself is very strange and also raises the question, what were they looking for and what did they actually find there? So if you're also looking at strange aspects of the moon is about 25% of the Earth's size and just 1% of its density. If the moon were hollow, this would actually explain that. Now, it also has some very strange characteristics. There is no other planet in our solar system that has a moon as big as ours. It also orbits closer than it should. And it's the only moon in the solar system that has a perfectly circular orbit. You don't see this anywhere else. It's normally oval. It's never perfectly circular. So because of its size and its orbit distance as well, It appears as perfectly as the same size as the sun during eclipses. And many people say that this should never occur naturally. Now, if you consider that our distance to the sun is 400 times our distance to the moon, and the size of the sun is 400 times the size of the moon, how could that be a natural coincidence?
It's interesting, isn't it?
You have then in 1970, two Soviet scientists looked at all of these strange anomalies regarding the moon. They came to the conclusion that the moon is indeed hollow. Not only that, but it most resembles, according to these Soviet scientists, a craft that was brought here by something or somebody else. But who?
So the moon as a craft?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, this kind of speaks into some ancient cultures as well, because there was a time, and you can go back to different tribes and ancient cultures, where they speak about a time before the moon and then a time after the moon came. Now, every ancient culture speaks about the moon in some form, but if you go back far enough, the fewer stories you see about the sky before the moon arrived. Here's a summation of some of those stories.
Aristotle mentioned the Proserpines, a legendary people who existed before celestial bodies graced the sky. Other ancient cultures from around the world also describe a time before the moon's arrival. In Greek lore, the poet Hesiod spoke of a time when the earth bore no moon, while the Hindu Rig Veda tells of a deity who seized the moon and placed it in the heavens. The Mayans and even some Native American tribes have their own stories about a time before the moon's appearance.
It's interesting. So the whole the moon is hollow thing, then, that's common belief over history, is it?
It is. And the Zulu tribe in Africa probably have the most interesting one, because what they have always claimed and taught their people is that what's inside that the moon is hollow, and that inside it then contains an ancient reptilian alien race, which David Icke, I'm sure, is very happy to hear.
She's delighted with that, yeah.
Now, this Zulu tribe in Africa, they tell the story of two brothers who brought the moon. The Sumerians also have a similar belief that the moon was brought here by two brothers, Enki and Enlil, who are often referred to as well as the Anunnaki. Now, anyone familiar with that term will recognise it as the alien race, which some believe are the ones who started life on Earth here. They are referred to as gods in ancient texts. Now, the Zulu also talk about how the climate on Earth was very different before the moon, which you would expect. There were no seasons. The atmosphere itself was covered in a cloud of water vapour. And we now know, of course, that the moon stabilises our climate. So if it was brought here, why was it? Was it to stabilise our climate and make it more, I suppose, of a better environment for us to live in? Because without it, we wouldn't be here. This is scientist and author William Henry explaining.
Recent computer simulations have shown that without the moon's presence, the Earth's axis tilt would be completely different than it is today. We might not even have seasons as we know them presently. Without the seasons, it could be very difficult for life on Earth. So the moon is actually performing an incredible function. It's life-sustaining. Without it, we might not be here.
What else are the Zulus saying, or did the Zulus say?
Well, the Zulus say as well that when the moon was placed in its position, that the water vapour that initially covered our atmosphere all fell at once, and it created a huge flood. Now, as we know, of course, every ancient culture talks about a devastating flood that took out large swathes of the earth. It's believed that that's what took out Atlantis and different ancient cultures as well. So the question then is, why do all of these ancient cultures have myths that we now know tie into massive events that we can see evidence of on the earth? So if we look at kind of what's going on in the moon and the science, I mean, the science will tell us that the moon is a cold, hard place with no atmosphere. Also that there hasn't been any seismic activity there for millions of years. But there has been strange things happening on the moon that has been identified and spotted by scientists, because in 1971, on March 7th, a cloud of water vapour appeared on the moon, and they were able to discover that it covered 100 square miles and stayed for 14 hours before it dissipated. Now, there isn't supposed to be atmosphere on the moon, but it was there for 14 hours. You also have 6 astronomers in the past 100 years who've documented a glowing mist on one of the moon's craters called Plato. This was the same mist and the same crater over many years. What's also strange about the moon, you can see boulder tracks, and lots of them, not just a couple. So how are boulders travelling for miles by themselves, and many of them uphill? You also have, since the days of Aristotle, astronomers have seen strange lights on the moon. And NASA themselves have even reported that between 1540 and 1967, there were 570 sightings of light flashes on the moon that can't be explained. Now, if you remember previous Conspiracy Files, we were speaking about whether or not the moon landings were fake.
Yeah.
We spoke about a Sergeant Carl Wolf, and he claimed to be part of this high-level secret government panel that was part of what was investigating what was on the moon, and he claimed to have seen pictures of the other side of the moon, and that there were various buildings there, and that had been taken over by an alien race essentially, and is being used to watch us. Now, he's a former Air Force sergeant, and he spoke about what he saw. Just to remind you, we have covered it before, but just to remind you what he said.
Showed this base, which had geometric shapes. There were towers, there were spherical buildings. There were very tall towers and things that looked somewhat like radar dishes, but they were large structures. If I compare it to what I'm seeing now, because I do have photographs that have artifacts in them that are similar to what I saw, they're massive. Some of the structures are, half a mile in size. So they're huge structures.
Now, because we love conspiracies, what happened to him?
Well, wouldn't you know it, Carl Wolf died shortly after this interview, and that was after a tractor trailer hit his bicycle. Could be coincidence, might not be coincidence, but could it be that the Apollo missions discovered something, and that's why we haven't been back? Because we haven't been back since those Apollo missions. There's also the theory, of course, that the moon could be a way of controlling us and our behaviour, that it could be some transmitting device put there by somebody or something. Now, this might sound out there, but it does make sense when you look at how a full moon affects mood and sleep. Statistically, there is more crime during a full moon. There are more car accidents. Our sensitivity to pain is even more acute during a full moon. There is something also called the werewolf effect. It's also where the word lunatic comes from. Also, ask any nurse or Garda. They will tell you they are very busy during a full moon. They all dread working full moons because everybody just goes...
Is that true?
Absolutely. Everybody goes crazy. And nurses and guards will both say it's a crazy time to work.
Of course, it does affect tides. It is very, very powerful.
It's an energy force, so it's pulling on us in some way, and we might be able to recognise how it is, but it absolutely does. But all of that then throws out the question, what is the moon? Well, we really don't know. There are too many coincidences, too many unanswered questions, and they might only be answered if we go back. That is, if we were ever there at all.
And of course, that is the other big question, isn't it? I know that when a thought just came to me while you were chatting there, when Apollo came back, they brought samples of soil and samples of rock, and they dispersed those samples right around the world, including to Ireland,
as gifts.
Yeah. And did anything come from those examinations of those?
If they did, it was never released. So, do we even know where those samples are now?
I don't know, because I know something came to Trinity.
Yeah.
At some point or other. So wouldn't you love to?
I know, and you would think there was enough analysis done on that it would then be displayed. As far as I know, it's not displayed. So it's very hard to know. Even though you would have comets and meteorites that would fall here that you would have pieces of that you would see in museums.
But there's something, for instance. I mean, why wouldn't there have been comparisons made between those falling meteorites and the rocks that we say came from
and then you have conclusive evidence that what you're finding on the moon are some kind of asteroid strikes.
It's interesting. It's interesting, as always. But in the meantime, we're awaiting Donald Trump's announcement.
Any day this week. So it's all happening. Watch out for Candace Owens as well. She has to look after herself. And I tell you, it's an exciting time.
That's for sure. If you're a conspiracy theorist, for sure. Ellie, thanks very much indeed for that. We'll take a break back in just a moment.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.